Hi, fifth grade, and welcome to another edition of Mrs. Gentile's Math. So today's lesson is we are going to be dividing decimals by decimals. So up till now, we've been dividing decimals by whole numbers. So we've just had to move the decimal in our dividend right up into our quotient. Well, now with dividing decimals by decimals, we have to actually move the decimal out of our divisor first, but then that means we have to move it in our dividend as well. Okay, so we're going to walk through that and go through this together. So, our essential question, boys and girls, how is multiplying and dividing decimals similar to multiplying and dividing whole numbers? And just like we've talked about before, boys and girls, it's the same thing, except there's a decimal in there. So you have to factor that into the answer. Okay. All right. So our problem of the day. So what is the sum of the first 10 non-zero multiples of 20? Well, remember the difference between factors and multiples. Factors are two numbers that multiply into a number. Multiples are skip counting of the numbers themselves. So when we're looking for multiples, we're looking for skip counting of 20. Okay, so the first 10 multiples of 20. All right, so I get my trusty pen, okay, because I know you guys love that aspect of it. So I'm going to put the first 10 multiples. So if I'm skip counting by 20, start with 20, okay, then 40. So I'll write that down. Then 60. Okay. Then 80. So 20, 40, 60, 80. Then 100. Okay. So 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need 10 altogether. So then I have 120. 140. And ignore the slightly sloppy writing. Once I get into the hang of it, though, I find my groove, I'm all on it. It's like I'm an old pro. 120, 140, 160, because we're skip counting by 20s. 160. Then 180. And I wanted to fit it over here, but I don't want to squeeze it in too much. So I'm going to put it down here. So 200. Okay. All right. So you're sitting there looking at it and you're like, how am I going to add up all that? Because when it says what is the sum, you have to add all the numbers up. Well, think about mental math, boys and girls. There's some problems in here that we can easily do in our head. Like, for instance, I know that 200 plus 100 equals 300. So I'm going to write 300 right down here. Okay. And then I'm going to put a plus there. I'm going to cross out 200 and I'm going to cross out 100 so I don't use it again. Okay. I also know that 4 plus 6 equals 10. So 40 plus 60 equals 100. So I'm going to put the 100 there. All right. And I'm going to go cross out those two. Okay. Then I know that 8 plus 2 equals 10. Okay. So 80 plus 20 equal 100. So I'm going to cross out 80, cross out 20. Okay. And put another 100 down here. Okay. So then I'm going to do something that totally blows your mind right now. I'm going to take the 1 in 120 because it's a 100, and I'm going to take the 1 in 180, and that's going to be 100 plus 100 is 200. So I'm going to put plus 200 right there. And then 80, well, actually, here's what I'm going to do. 80 plus 20 is another 100. So then 100 plus 100 plus 100, I'm going to actually put a 300 there. And then blow your mind again. Okay. going to take the 100 and 140. I'm going to take out the 100 and 160. 100 plus 100 equals 200. Then I know 40 plus 60 equals another 100. So then I'm actually going to put this 300 right here. Okay. I'm going to put a plus there. Okay. I'm actually going to cross out my ones up above. There we go. Cross them out. Okay. So I'm adding 300 plus 300 plus 100 plus 100 plus 300. Well, I can skip count. 300, 600, 900. 900 plus 100 is 1000. But what's another way to say 1000? 10 hundreds equals 1,000. And then I have 1,000 plus one more 100. So that would be 1,100. Look at that, boys and girls. No calculator needed. Just Mrs. Gentile. Okay, so what is the sum of the first 10 non-zero multiples of 20? It is 1,100 because we added up 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, 140, 160, 180, and 200. All right, so I'm going to clear that. Okay, now it looks nice and clean again. See that? Okay, I'm going to get my, there we go. So I can do this, move to the next slide. All right, so where it says divide, check your answer using multiplication. Notice in my divisor, no decimals because we're getting into the process, so just getting it right back to it. But there is a decimal in my dividend, so there will be a decimal in my quotient. So what I do is I get my pencil. Because there's no decimal in my divisor, I go right over to my dividend and just move it right up, boys and girls, okay? So can 12 go into 2? It cannot. So remember, I like to put a little X there so I don't get confused, okay? Then 12 times what gets me close to 27? Well, 12 times 2. So I'm going to put my 2 right there. And 12 times 2 equals 24. So I'm going to put my 24 right here and subtract. All right. Bring that over there. Let's see. 7 take away 4 equals 3. 2 take away 2 equals 0. And I'm going to bring that 6 right down to 36. Okay. And 12 times what equals 36? Well, if 2 groups equal 24, then 3 groups will definitely equal, good night, boys. I love you. Okay. So you got to hear me say good night to my boys. And I blew kisses, said good night, boys. Okay. So 2 groups equals 24 of 12. So 3 groups equals 36. So then we put our 3 right here. Okay. And then I put my 36 down here. Nice and fancy like. I know you guys like that. Okay. And then we'll subtract. 36 take away 36 equals 0. So it says 2 3/10 times 12 equals 27 6/10. Or 27 6/10 divided by 12 equals 2 3/10. But it does tell me to check my answer using multiplication. So I'm going to do it right down over here. I know it's in the next problem spot, but I want to keep the numbers on there. So 2 3/10 times 12. Now remember, when multiplying with decimals, you do not have to line up decimals like when we're adding them. So look, I just put my 12 right here. Because if I were to line up decimals, my magic decimal would be right over there. So just like regular multiplying, I don't put the decimal until the end. 2 times 3 equals 6. 2 times 2 equals 4. Okay. And now what I do is I'm done multiplying by that 2, so I'm going to kind of cross it out so I don't try to use it again. And I put my 0 down here. Then I do 1 times 3 equals 3, because now I'm multiplying by the tens. All right. And 1 times 2 equals 2. Make sure I get it in the right spot. Okay. 6. And now I add. Let me put my addition symbol over there. So 6 plus 0 equals 6. 4 plus 3 equals 7. And 2 plus 0 equals 2. 276. That's not what my divisor or my dividend is. My dividend is 27 and 6 tenths. How'd I end up with 276? Oh, there's a decimal in one of my factors that I'm multiplying. So I count over one spot, and then I go down here, I count over one spot, and I put my decimal right in there. So 27 and 6 tenths is what our dividend started as. So our answer checks out. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear it because that is a hot mess right there. Even Mr. G agrees. He's nodding off camera, so you can't see him. So 83 and 2 tenths divided by 8. So I don't have a decimal in my divisor, so I'm going to go right here to my dividend and bring my decimal right up into the quotient. Okay, so 8 times what equals 8? Well, 8 times 1 equals 8, so I put a 1 up there. I bring my 8 down here, and I subtract. Okay, so 8 minus 8 equals 0. And then I bring my 3 down. Okay. Well, how many times does 8 go into 3? Well, I can't skip it because I have to hold the place value of it. So 8 actually goes into 3 0 times. Let me squeeze that little 0 in there. So 8 times 0 is 0. And I subtract. So 3 minus 0 equals 3. And then I bring my 2 down. See that? I'm keeping it nice and neat. Okay. And then how many groups of 8 equal 32? You got it, 4. Okay. So put my 32 down here because 8 times 4 equals 32. And I do my subtraction. Okay, 32 take away 32 equals 0. And then I have 10 and 4 tenths as a quotient. Well, it tells me to check my answer using multiplication. So what I'm going to do is right over here is I'm going to multiply 10 and 4 tenths. Let's see if I can get it this time. 10 and 4 tenths times 8. Because you multiply in a division problem in order to check your answer to see if you divided correctly, you have to end up with your dividend. So you multiply your quotient times your divisor, and you should end up with your dividend. So I'm multiplying by 8. That's where I got my information from. Don't need to line any decimals up. We're multiplying. So 4 times 8 is 32. Put my 2 down here. Carry my 3. Or regroup my 3. It's all different terms now. 8 times 0 equals 0, plus 3 equals 3. And 8 times 1 equals 8. 832. I can't be right. Oh, Mrs. G, you forgot your decimal. Okay, so I have a decimal in one of my factors, so I go over to there. It's one place over. Start at the end, one place over. 83 and 2 tenths matches my dividend over here. So we did, in fact, divide correctly. But I knew you guys could do it. You've had a lot of practice on this. Don't let those decimals bother you. You guys have got this, okay? So I'm going to clear this out because, again, hot mess with all that information over there. Okay, we're going to skip the next slide because we're not going to worry about it right now. And we're actually going to just do this slide for the full completion of today's lesson. And this is the problem that's in your math workbooks, volume 1, on page 563. So page 563. So if you want to follow along while you're listening to this lesson, take out your volume 1 math workbook, 563. Because then I'm going to have you do the 2 problems that are on page 564 as practice. And then what I'll do is I'll make a copy of it. I'll put it in a slide so that you can just type your answers in there. Okay. All right. So it says Casey is 4 and 5/10 feet tall. Her brother Jerome is 6 and 7/500 feet tall. How many times taller is Jerome than Casey? So what we're doing is we're dividing 6 and 7/500 divided by 4 and 5/10. Okay, well, now we do have a decimal in the divisor, but we cannot have a decimal in the divisor. So what we have to do is multiply it by a power of 10 to make it a whole number so that it doesn't have a decimal in it. Okay, so we have 4 and 5/10. So we know by multiplying by powers of 10 that we multiply 4 and 5/10 by 10. You don't need to like rewrite it and multiply 4 and 5/10 by 10. Remember our decimal dog? How when you multiply by a power of 10, you move that decimal to the right, the number of zeros in the power of 10. So multiply 4 and 5/10 by 10 to make 45. So all they do right here, and boys and girls, I'm going to get my pen again. What they do is, because there's 1 0 and 10, I move that decimal to the right one place, and now I have it makes my divisor a whole number of 45. However, if I move the decimal in my divisor, I also have to do the same thing to my dividend and move my decimal the same number of places in my dividend, okay? So then I multiply 6 and 75 hundredths by the same number of 10, and 10 has 1 0 in it. So I move that decimal one place to the right, just like I did with my divisor. So now I'm dividing, and it's rewritten up here. 67 and 5/10 by the whole number of 45. And see, there's that magic decimal right there. Okay. And which is where they're showing you where they put it. And then, but there's not really a decimal there, so you don't have to place that one. So then what you do is you move your decimal right up from your dividend into your quotient, because once you've gotten rid of the decimal in the divisor and you've moved your decimal in your dividend, then you can place it just like you would in a regular division problem by decimals. Okay, so now what we're trying to figure out, now remember, you're multiplying the decimal in the divisor by a power of 10. So if it had been this number right here, so if it had been 0 and 45 hundredths, what power of 10 would I have multiplied it by? Well, look, how many spots am I going to have to move to the right to get my decimal to make 45 into a whole number? Well, 1, 2. What power of 10 has 2 zeros in it? If the number 10 has 1 0 in it, you just add a 0 to it. So what we did was we multiplied this by, and I'm just going to write that down like that. We multiplied this by 100. Okay. And boys and girls, we're going to spend a lot of time on this. So if you don't master it by today, or if you're very confused at the end of this, we're going to spend more time on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clear that, and then I'll put my decimals just like I did over here. So I moved that decimal. Now I'm going to clear that again because that's not neat. Okay, so I'm going to move that over to here. All right, and then this one gets moved over by 1. Okay, so my new decimal's there. And just like I put it up in the quotient. Now place the decimal point in the quotient, and now I can begin dividing as with whole numbers. Okay, so can 45 go into 6? It cannot. So they didn't put an X there, but I'm going to, so I don't mistakenly place my first digit in the wrong spot. So how many groups of 45 can equal 67? Well, 1. So then I'm going to do 45, because 45 times 1 equals 45. All right. And I have 7 take away 5, which is 2. And I have 6 take away 4, which also equals 2. Okay. So now I need to know how many groups of 45 can actually go into 225. So you know how we want to start in the middle, boys and girls, and we want to kind of figure out like how many groups of 45? Well, 5 would be the middle. So let's see if that works out. So 45 times 5, and I'm going to multiply it over here. Okay. Hopefully I won't run into my other one. So 45 times 5. Okay. So 5 times 5 is 25. Put my 5 down here. Carry my 2. Okay. 4 times 5 is 20 plus 2 more, 22. Ooh, look at that. Ooh, I'm on fire today, boys and girls. So look at that. It divides in evenly. So 5 groups of 45 equal 225. And I'll write that right down there. And then we will 225 minus 225 is 0. So Jerome is 1 and 5/10 times taller than his sister Casey. Okay. 1 and 5/10 taller. All right. So, boys and girls, what we're doing is we're going to not continue in the math book after here. We're going to do more of that on the next video that I share with you, probably on Wednesday. And we'll do more work on that one. But what I'm going to assign for today, just so you can get used to moving that decimal out of the divisor, moving it as many places in your dividend, and then placing it in your quotient, I'm going to have you do the 2 problems on page 564 in your math workbook, and I'll put those on a slide for you. Always remember, boys and girls, take a deep breath. Don't get frustrated. Try it. Because if you don't try, you won't know. And mistakes are proof that you're trying. And we're going to make a lot of mistakes along the way here. You can see that I made a few along the way, and that's okay. That's how we learn. So if you have any questions, though, hop on to the 11 o'clock Zoom help hour, and I can walk you through it, okay? Or send me an email, send me a message, and we'll work through this because I don't want anyone to be frustrated, okay? So boys and girls, have fun decimals and moving your decimals. And I will talk with you soon. Bye.